Шановні колеги, будемо продовжувати.
Esteemed colleagues, we are going to continue our work. Next topic is presentation of new report, Crimea in the Dark, Silence No Dissent. We have Oksana Pokalchuk, Acting Director, Amnesty International Ukraine, also Krassimir Yankov, researcher of Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, Amnesty International, and Krivosheev, Deputy Director of Europe and Central Asia, Amnesty International. The floor is given to Oksana Pokalchuk. You have the floor. You can hear me, right? Good morning. We are happy to see you here, and we thank those who watching our briefing through internet. We're going to talk about our second mission to the Crimea after the events of 2015. Our first report was called 1 year after, regarding the Crimea's situation, was published in 2015. And now, 18 months after the first report was made public, we are going to present our second report entitled Crimea in the Dark, Silencing or Suppression of Dissent. In this report, this deals with the repressive methods which over the two and a half years have been used de facto by the local authorities in the Crimea against the Crimean Tatar community, all those who may have a different opinion. We believe that inclusion of the Crimea in the Russian legal field became the violation of international law and allowed the local authorities to prosecute the local public figures, charging them with the terrorism and other crimes. My colleague will talk more about that. Also, we declare that the representative organ of the Crimean Tatar Majlis was prohibited as the so-called extremist organization. They prohibited any kind of participation in their activities is recognized as the crimes and territory of the Crimea as part of the Russian Federation today. And our researcher, Yankov, is going to tell you more details about that, Krassimir. And maybe in the end we can have this kind of question and answer session. Good morning. Thanks to everybody who joined us here. Our mission to the Crimea took place in the end of September, and during this mission we managed to travel all over the peninsula and had meetings with a number of people who directly suffered as a result of the de facto actions of the Russian authorities in the Crimea. Also, we can meet their lawyers and local activists and their legal advisors and human rights advocates. Also, we had meetings. We wanted actually to meet de facto representatives of the local authorities, but we failed to do that despite the fact that we actually sent them an official inquiry several weeks before going there. I would like to describe three cases, details of which you can find in this report, because those three cases demonstrate different methods which the Russian authorities in the Crimea use in order to suppress or to silence the dissent. One of the people which I would like to talk about, Akhtemchikos, deputy chairman, deputy head of the Majlis of the Crimean Tatar people, after May 2014, when the Russian authorities prohibited Ripat Chubar to enter the Crimea, in Mustafa Dzhemilov, Akhtemchikos turned out to be one of the top national figures of the Tatar people on the Crimean Peninsula. As we know, they also, the Russian authorities attempted to persuade him to be loyal to their activities, but Akhtemchikos denied that. They refused to do that. And in January 2015, in the end of January 2015, he was detained on the suspicion of organizing the mass-scale public disorder in 2014 near the Parliament of Crimea. At the moment when actually big pro-Ukrainian demonstration and a big pro-Russian demonstrations took place at the same place, and some moment they actually came across one another. As a result of those events, those calamities, two people were found dead. However, what the Russian authorities accuse Artem Chikos the criminal scheme or criminal plan to organize those public disorders, and that actually doesn't correspond to what really happened during those events, but also even those witnesses with the prosecutor evidence given, testimonies given by those who provide by prosecutors. Now, all this actually, this person actually spent 18 months the pre-trial period behind the bars, and the hearings started in August last year, and we managed to be present there. 44 witnesses on the prosecutor's side were questioned, and nobody of them can indicate that she was the organizer of those disorders. Nobody of them even saw him in February 2014. But what is very interesting, Artem Chigos was not present at his own court hearing. They provide him the Skype connection. He is in Simferopol in the temporary detention facility, and we could see that this approach actually violates his right to fair justice or to just court. They do not use, the real connection, just the ordinary Skype connection. And the quality of the internet connection leaves much to be desired, and we actually managed during the break to talk to him through the same Skype connection. It could be vivid that he cannot hear what's going on in the courtroom or the answers of his lawyer, the prosecutor. He cannot really defend himself or put his own questions to those witnesses who were brought to court. And we believe that the way they try to take the judicial decision regarding this Chigos violates his right to just court hearing. As far as we understand, in December, the Crimean authorities decided to accelerate the court hearings regarding this case. Artem Chigos, now they're going to start questioning the witnesses of defense, in which testified that the Russian authorities tried to pass a verdict with some long-term sentence, maybe by the date when the Crimea was occupied, in March 18th next year, or before the New Year Eve. Also, we communicated with journalist Nikolai Semenoid. He's a Ukrainian journalist who, for over 25 years and even more, has lived in Crimea. He has a family and his house is there. After annexation, he continued to work for some foreign media in the Crimea, for the Radio Liberty, etc., realizing completely the hazard for him while staying here. Nikolai Semenoid actually wrote his articles under different pen names, but he didn't know that during the time when he was writing those articles, they actually used the spy software on his PC, which actually transmit the complete information what he's working on, what he was writing about, and under which pen names. He also published the Crimean reality, about Crimean realities. The articles was called "The Blockade of the Crimea," the first step to deoccupy and to finish the occupation of the Crimea. He published this that article on another pen name or nickname, but in October this year, let's say, the people from the FSB, the Secret Service of Russia, came to him home. They confiscated his PC and other gadgets. He was taken to the FSB directorate in Simferopol, and they demonstrated to him the screenshots from his computer showing different stages of writing this article of the Crimean blockade. He was charged of, let's say, encroachment or the equivalent of encroachment on the local authorities in the Crimea. As a result, Nikolai Seminin was prohibited to leave the boundaries of the city of Simferopol without the consent given by the FSB investigator who deals with his specific case. Always he was put on the list of the extremists of the Russian Federation. That means he cannot use his bank accounts or his deposits or there at. Of course, he ceased to work as a journalist after that, and so happens that not only the Russian authorities tried to revenge. To accuse him of something because he did not call for some kind of violence. He was just was doing his duties as a journalist. He now he can be sentenced to 5 to 7 years of imprisonment. In addition to that, he cannot work as a journalist, and he has no access to his deposits in the banks because he's on a list of extremists. Before those events, and Nikolai Seminin has some problems with health, with his back, and he told us during our interview he would like to go to Kiev and to the territorial land Ukraine in order to get necessary treatment, even to be operated. He actually sent the request to FSB in Russia, but unfortunately he was denied his request, and now the situation is the person who needs some medical operation, he doesn't have any access to his money, and who is threatened with a very long imprisonment term. And this is a person advanced in years, and we really are very much concerned about his fate. Also, we managed to talk to the family and the lawyer of the Sinkuku.
We definitely know that Amir Saim Kuku, after annexation, several times was approached by FSB with the intention to engage him to intelligence activities, and nevertheless he rejected several times to do this, and finally he was arrested for alleged participation in Harizabo Krim organization, allegedly the extremist organization. After that, again, the FSB agents tried to engage him as an FSB agent. Then 9-year-old son of Emir Buku was sent a man who represented himself an FSB agent, and who said to there's a boy that his father is now in a jail and he would remain in a jail for 10 or 12 years because he rejected to speak to be engaged into FSB activities. The family immediately submitted a complaint to the local police precinct, and nevertheless the local nothing was made. On the other hand, the local precinct officer tried to investigate why a person who remains in pre-trial detention did not defend his son from the interference of such strange people like that man. And a wife of Emir Boku is afraid to lose the right of parental care upon their child because of these alleged accusations. Now Emir Boku remains in detention, in pre-trial detention, and the period for stay there is now extended till January or February 2017. All that information which I described you can find in more detail in the handouts, which will be disseminated after the press conference. And now my colleague will Denis Krivosheev will describe what we wish to do. So we will. I will try to sum up 2 years of our work and situation with the Crimean Tatars in Crimea. While unfortunately the situation has been deteriorating very considerably, while at the beginning we mentioned just the violation of the freedom of speech, etc. Well, now we clearly state that people who try to enjoy their right on the freedom of speech, they are persecuted, and the government, the local authorities try to oppress them. We came to conclusion that local authorities have strong intention to intimidate very cruelly all of those people who express alternative views and disagree with Russian occupation of Crimea. In Russian Federation, this is a standard situation. All the events in Crimea we assess from the point of view of international law. That is, we believe that the territory is occupied, and our standpoint position is that as an occupied territory, Russia is violating the norms of international law. The territory is fully incorporated into Russian law system. They violate all the territorial rights of population, and when Crimean people are transported to Russia for court trial and for court proceedings, this is even bigger violation of the international law. The final provisions of our publication provide recommendations based on the fact that the right for the freedom of speech is violated. We believe that this human right should be enjoyed and respected throughout the entire Crimea. We believe that all the mass media should come back to Crimean territory and broadcast freely there. Journalists should be able to express their point of view. Peaceful assembly should be held based upon international standards in this area. Any direct prohibition of the peaceful assemblies should not be allowed. Russian civil law, by the way, imposes excessive limitations on the freedom of peaceful assemblies, and because it requests for compulsory permission from local authorities. Moreover, in Simferopol, local mayor had prohibited all the peaceful assemblies in the city except those which are organized by official authorities there. Then about Mejlis, which is the most important part of our report. Mejlis was announced as an extremist organization. First, there was alleged decision of the Crimean Supreme Council, then the Russian parliament decision, and we encourage and call for denial or repeal of this decision. We believe that this organization of Crimean Tatar people, Mejlis, should be granted the right of free activities. As for criminal persecution of Akhtemchi Gos, we believe that all the accusations on him are fake, they are not true. The same is true about Emir Umerov, who is not in detention now, although he spent some time in the psychiatric clinic. Now he is detained at home, not in a jail, and we believe that he should be also liberated. The same is true about all those people who were arrested and kept in detention because of their connections with Mejlis. As for those people who were blamed as participants as Abdu Ahrir organization, unlike Mejlis, Tezbu Ahrir is a terrorist organization, which means more serious sanctions for the participants of these organizations, and members of this organization are subject to the military court proceedings, which is unacceptable in line with the international law. Moreover, we mentioned, Krassimir mentioned Zmira Kuku, who is persecuted because of his human rights activities. After first court proceedings about those people who were recognized as guilty and members of the terrorist organization, they are and as far as I know, many witnesses tried to repeal their witnesses and confessions made in course of investigation, which again suggests that this Sebastopol 4, as we call them, this defendants, they are simply intimidated in course of this course proceedings. Once again, violation of the right for fair court, fair justice should not be violated. Also, as for Ukrainian government, we encourage the Ukraine to ratify the Roman Statute, which is the basics for the International Criminal Court. Actually, for Ukraine, this will not change the situation for Ukraine radically. Ukraine has already recognized the authority of the Roman Statute, but the transition period, which was accepted by Ukraine, postpones the fair court for some people like those whom we mentioned today. In more detail, all those facts are described in this in our report. The most important thing we should not give up give up from Crimea. We should attend this territory, describe the situation for broad public, and thus we will help those whose rights are violated. I would like to draw your attention to this report. You can find the e-version on our website, Amnesty International Ukraine. Please read it. I think that this is important information for everybody, for all the human rights activists in Ukraine. I also would draw your attention to the marathon of letters. This is our biggest human rights action in Ukraine. The Irvin Ibrahimov's case is described in our report, and this year our letters action is devoted to this fact. He was kidnapped from his car in the street, and occasionally this was shot on camera. And 6 months has passed since that moment, and his parents do not know where he is. We encourage you to attend our website, Amnesty International, and to sign up a petition to the Crimean authorities about proper investigation of this case. And we encourage you to write down a letter to his parents, who are elderly people and whose only son had disappeared. We all understand that these are not singular occasions, but we should remember about them. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience? So please introduce yourself before putting the question. At your TV company, speaking about the court who has participated in this court's meeting, so what is necessary to do for Chigos to, what kind of conditions are they have to ensure? Okay, we visited the building, the Supreme Court of Crimea, where they hear this case of Chigos, and I should note that when we were there in September this year, to be more specific, 26th and 27th of September. They heard a lot of different cases associated with the Crimean Tatars. We could see the hearing to extend the term of detention of his Krivosheev, Muslim Lebov in particular, who Dissent mentioned, and we were present at the court meeting and when they heard the case of Chigos. So there are three judges, two local Crimean ones and one which came from the territory of the Russian Federation. The lawyer, the defender Polozov, prosecutor, in the TV set in one of the corner where Temchik goes and together with his public defender and his wife Abralimova. And the whole sitting or hearing was rather strange because all those hearings start usually with a request of lawyer Polozov to bring Chigos to the courtroom. As far as we know, the judges immediately declined this request or refused them to do that when they actually interview the witnesses, and most oftentimes they are representatives of the Crimean defense, those people who actually sided with the pro-Russian meeting in those days. They put them the questions whether they were present at the meeting proper, how they came to take part in that, and the whole interview or the question ends whether they saw Chigos and they agree with the accusation. We heard the interrogation or interview of the four witnesses. None of them said that and all of them said that they did not know that person, and as far as we can understand. So that was the way they actually interviewed or questioned all the witnesses of prosecution. Now, they have not started yet the interviewing of witness of defense. I don't know what they wanted from Temchigos and the other Majlis representatives, why Pachibarov and the Mustafa Jamilim, they actually were prohibited to come to the Crimea, to enter the Crimea territory. They wanted to make them actually take an oath that they needed their loyalty confirmation. For example, the day of the Crimean Tatar flag, and they wanted, etc., etc. They wanted to the representatives of the de facto official Crimean authorities, so that they would raise the Russian Federation flag and the Russian Federation anthem to sound. As far as we know, the leaders of the Crimean Tatar people declined that and repeatedly, and the consequences of that, as you may know, the Russian authorities in the Crimea, they prohibited holding the day of the deportation memory and other traditional memorable days of the Crimean Tatars. And this year, since they expect the same answer, as far as we know, the representatives of Majlis didn't even come up with their request because they knew that the Russian Federation authorities would not accept that. We should say that Chigos and other leaders of the Crimean Tatar people, they are persecuted because they did not want to declare that they were loyal to the de facto Russian Federation authorities in the Crimean Peninsula. Thank you. Any more questions? If none, we are going to finish this briefing. May I wish you every success in your endeavors and see you again. As colleagues, our next briefing will take place